that will give us higher yield. When we say 30 ton per hectare, you should be able to have that 30 ton or 35 ton per hectare. Next slide. And that is the goal of this current approach. You see the plant I'm showing you. This is the way cassava feed should be. Just like our chairman, the way she's looking, is the way cassava seed must be at the private level. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Latif Sani, Food Science and Technology, IITA. Thank you very much indeed, sir, for that very, what a great way to open the conversation this morning. Professor Latif Sani in his presentation has made a very good case for cassava being a potential alternative to oil revenue in Nigeria, and I hope he's been able to sufficiently adequately respond to the first question that came through as to whether realistically cassava could be an alternative to oil. Going through the value chain and even highlighting the fact that it's very critical in the production of ethanol, which is 80% of hand sanitizers, and I don't think hand sanitizers are going anywhere in the near future following this pandemic. We just think that there's so many areas to be explored to utilize cassava. It's also beyond drawing a case for cassava as an alternative, has also balanced it with what must be put in place to ensure that this is achieved. And from his presentation, we note that very important is government intervention, government political will, government policies, credit facilities made available, infrastructure, talking about roads. And I'm grateful for the fact that we do have a representative from the Bank of Industry here, and who will be presenting very shortly to us. And I'm sure that there are going to be many questions for our Bank of Industry representative. Again, a big thank you to Professor Latif Sani for that very engaging and persuasive argument to tell us that cassava can be an alternative to oil. So I hope that the bills are turning in our mind and seeing how we can maximize this opportunity. We'll move on very quickly to our second, or the first paper presentation for this morning. And he's also from IITA, which is the International Institute for Tropical Agriculture. He's a senior scientist and currently head of IITA station on a River State. He's a cassava commodity specialist in the outreach component of the African Development Bank, sponsor project called Agricultural Transformation Agenda. He will be presenting a paper to us on improved production and technologies for industrial cassava utilization. Distinguished board members of Nepal Business Group, Nigeria, panelists, registered delegates, please make very welcome Dr. Richardson Okechukwu from the International Institute of Tropical Agriculture. Thank you, Dr. Richardson.
Thank you, moderator. Can I have the presentation? Good morning, everyone. I would like to have the presentation, please. Okay, I'll be speaking to you today on improved production technologies for industrial cassava utilization. One key thing we should all know about industrial cassava utilization is that they require large volumes of cassava each day, and they would like to get it at a good price. Next slide. So, as Professor Sani earlier introduced, Nigeria is a large producer of, we're the largest producer of cassava in the world. Most of the cassava produced are by smallholder farmers over on 3 million hectares of land. And the farms are mostly intercrop with yams, melon, maize, legumes. And the way the crop is grown, it encourages perennial weeds. And if we don't manage weeds, we do get as reduction in yield of up to 80%. Weeding is also very intensive in cassava farms. Next slide. So we have been shown the potentials that are there in the crop, from the leaf, which can serve both as vegetable for human beings and also for livestock. We also have the root, which you can convert to so many products from the fresh form into the basic foods we normally eat, the fufu, the hkc, the gari, the starch, the tapioca. In the dry form, you can also take it to things like livestock fields and fuels. And the stem also is now also big business that people can actually go into cassava production just to grow improved quality stems for sale. Next slide. 10 years ago, there was a review done to look at the demand of cassava-based products in Nigeria. And it came up with these values, which presently today is much more than what we are having here. Demand of 230,000 tons of starch in Nigeria, sweeteners 190,000 tons, and so on. And for just to provide these volumes of value-added product, you require equivalent volumes of fresh fruit for about 12 million tons of fresh fruit to be provided every year to provide these values of products. These 12 million tons, if we average our yield at 25 tons per hectare, if that is achieved, will only require about 610,000 hectares of land. Now, Nigeria is presently using about 3 million hectares of land in growing cassava. So we have the ability to actually provide this volume of fruits and even more, if only we can improve our practices on the existing land. We don't need new fresh land. We just need to improve the practices on the existing land. And those are the things I will talk about in this presentation. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide.
Next slide. The next slide is this one.
Okay, yeah.
Yes, sir.
So yeah, so this map done in 2012 shows the Nigerian production, the production capacity of the various states in Nigeria. And we can see that cassava actually can be produced anywhere. It's just that in the northernmost part, you need more rainfall. Okay, but if you can provide water, cassava can be produced. So what the key issue is that is the yields have been very low. We still have a yield as low as average yield of about 16 tons per hectare, which is far below what is expected in good cassava producing countries. We'll be talking above 24 tons, 27 tons per hectare. So a lot can be done to the present production of cassava we have for us to be able to increase our yield using the same land at lower resources. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide, please. So,
I've changed the slides.
Okay, this is fine. So if we look at where production is in the value chain of cassava production, is the third position. It is it's there in the third position because it is the place that meets with the required inputs and the required research and development knowledge that goes with higher productivity. We need to make sure that the members in the production component are adequately educated to be able to know how to produce a cheaper price, because above them are the processors. The processors and the products they make have got limited prices. And because they have limited prices, they can't continue to live on fluctuating prices of fresh fruit. And also because they have got markets and demands, regularity, we also have to make sure that the volumes are produced are enough and consistent to always go to what is needed. So emphasis on production is key. And if the people who are producing are not happy, everybody in the whole chain will not be happy with the industry. Now, it's also good to note that the things that happens in production also has to be, we need to look at the natural resources and the physical environment that surround each person's place, because cassava is environmentally dependent. So if you can have the same variety giving you different yields in different locations, just because there is variation in the soil nutrient and there is variation in the weather and there is a stream there, or there is somebody put fertilizer or somebody not put fertilizer, it all matters. Also, the policy environment also affects production, because a large number of Nigerians who are farmers farm cassava. So anything that comes out of policy actually affects how do we grow, how much of the land they will dedicate to the crop, and whether they will be able to adopt some of the practices that we are telling them to go about doing. Next slide. So this shows you that we've got the great potential to actually produce get these big yields in a very short time. This is just an example of just changing the existing varieties with the improved varieties that we have in the same place. And the results we saw that yields doubled. And all over Africa, this has been a challenge. There's this big yield gap between well-managed farms and the natural averages. So the key way to move is to work and get the farmers to actually narrow this yield gap. And once they can narrow the yield gap, the volumes available will be more. And when it is more, it will be more available to the industries at cheaper price. Next. So research has also shown that, so the key thing is, if you can get the improved varieties to farmers, and if they can mechanize, you can drop your cost by as high as 40.5%. This is where we need to make a big change in Nigeria. We need to mechanize our cassava farming, and we need to have access to high quality improved planting materials. Next slide. Next. As I said, the policy environment will, once it's good, the limit is, the sky is the limit. This shows you some of the varieties that we have at IITA. Some of them have been released to farmers. What you can get in the yields can go as above as 100 tons per hectare. So even that we're talking about 25 tons per hectare, it's just small stuff. The varieties don't have limits once you can provide the appropriate environment, and they will do well. Next slide. In terms of all the machines that are required for mechanization in Nigeria, they are all available in Nigeria. We've got tractor planters, we've got harvesters, we've got boom sprayers, we've got slashers. All these machines are available in Nigeria. It requires that if you have to go into large cassava cultivation, these are the key inputs you must get access to, and then your cost will be going lower. Next slide.
Hello. Okay, I need part of this.
So the mechanization is just for an example, what 1 hectare with 3 persons can plant, you require about 12 persons to plant it in 1 day. So for industries, we are talking about large hectares to provide the yields that they need. And so it is not something you want to tie down to manual cultivation. Manual cultivation will give you very limited volumes, and it will take a lot of time to also achieve. So people with large expanse of land, machine is the way to go with improved variety. Next. because the countries we are competing with are all they are already fully mechanized. This is a 4,000 hectare farm, and you can see the number of planters that are doing the work simultaneously. A tractor will plant about 4 hectares per day. Now, if you have to do 1,000 hectares, then you know you will take months to be able to do that if you're just having one planter. So this is why you need more. And service providers who can bring in this type of machines are key to us commercializing our farm production and mechanizing it. Next slide. And so these are the key production tips every farmer needs to know. Whether you are a large-scale farmer or a small-scale farmer, you need to know that at least you need a minimum of 20 cm planting stake of a good quality seed to get good planting established. You need to know about plant spacing. This is the number of plants that should sit within an area of land. And for us in cassava, we say that the minimum you should have at the time you plant should be 12,500 plants per hectare. This is at the spacing of 1 meter by 0.8 meter. I'll talk more about it as we move forward. You also need to know that there are so many varieties. In Nigeria, we've got over 50 varieties that have been released. You need to find the one that best gives you the yield you have for your own locality. And it should also be a variety that is targeting a particular market. If you want to sell your cassava to a starch factory, then you pick a high starch content variety with high dry matter content. If you want to sell your cassava to maybe a Gary factory that is going to do vitamin A Gary, then you pick a yellow root variety. If you want to sell it to one that is doing normal Gary, high dry matter content, there are also varieties for that. Now, if your environment is such that you don't have more than 2 months or 3 months of rain, then you need to pick a variety that is early maturing that you can plant there. You can't take a long duration material. If you are living in a place that is waterlogged, which is not a very good environment for cassava, then you also have to look for a variety that is also early maturing and that can also withstand that type of environment. Next slide. No, back, please. Okay. So we also need to be, I've mentioned about mechanization, but we have to also know about weed management. It is very key. If you don't manage weed in cassava farm, you can lose up to 80% of your yield. And once you lose it at the onset of the plant, you can't recover it no matter what you do afterwards. So weed management is key. Fertilizer application is also important in cassava. Cassava takes a lot of nutrients from the soil. We have to also manage that soil and put something back. But certain varieties do better with certain fertilizers. And so if you know that, then you know it is economically wise for you to apply fertilizer for that type of variety when you have it. I'll talk more about it as we move forward. Time of operation is also key because cassava stays between about 12 months to mature. Good early varieties from 8 months, you can start to harvest it. But when you want to harvest it, you want to be sure that it is the appropriate time when you can maximize your dry matter content and your starch content. At times that falls within the drier season period. So you want to time when you plant so that when it is maturing, it is falling into a good period for you to harvest. So we also need to know about the diseases of cassava and the different pests that come with it. Most of the varieties that have been released are multiple pest disease resistant. So we don't need to worry much, but we have to be careful because cassava is a very important crop. In East Africa, Southern Africa, they are here highly being destroyed by cassava brown streak disease, and we don't want that to get into Nigeria. How do you conserve your planting material is also very key because when you have a good planting material, You don't just discard them after one season of cropping. After some years, yes, you can buy a new one or take a new variety, but you need to know how to manage the planting material for the next seasons. Also, when you buy the planting material from a good source and your land is not yet ready, you also need to conserve. So how do you also manage your soil is very important, because when you go into commercial cassava farming, you'll be talking of hundreds of hectares. We need to know how to keep this land sustainable and very, very useful for you to continue to do your production. Next slide. Another good knowledge that you should also have is how to measure your starch content. Okay, there are techniques that are available there that farmers should be able to know how to measure their starch content before they take it to the companies for sale. This enables you to have a stronger bargaining power. Now, in establishing the farm, most people can either plant the cassava stake vertical, some plant it slanted, and some also plant it flat. Any of these three methods, the cassava will germinate, but it depends on your land and your terrain, how you're operating. If your land is on a ridge, on a hill, you want to make your ridges across the slope, and you want to plant vertical, so that if there's rain or slope or water, the cassava can bend by those forces. If you keep it slanted, there might be chances that it might topple from where you have inserted the stick. But if you have a relatively flat land, it's best to have it slanted, because it gives you advantage when you'll be harvesting. So, but if you're using a mechanical planter, it will definitely be planted flat. Can I get my slide? Can I get the presentation? Can I get the presentation? Okay. Yeah, so so as I said, planting spacing is important. We want you to make sure you have at least 1 meter by 0.8 to have at least 12,500 plant stand if you're doing if you're a root producer. But if you're somebody who is interested in going into stem production, your planting spacing should be 1 meter by 0.5 meters, so that you have more plant stands for you to sell, so that you'll be having a population of 20,000 plant stands per hectare. And even though you sell the stem, you still have some roots that is also good for you to harvest. Now we need to be, the key thing here is that what you have planted should be well managed to the time of maturity. Even though you have 12,500 plants at the planting, if you can't keep at least 10,000 to be alive at the 8th month or the 12th month when you want to harvest, you are likely going to lose all that you have invested in the business, because your yield and your money comes from the number of plant stands at maturity. So we've given that allowance that some may die, some may not germinate, or something may happen out of the 12,500, but please, it should not go less than 10,000 plant stands at the time of harvest. Next slide. So for every commercial business processing factory for cassava, we advise you that you should try at least put 60% of your needs, only a farm that can provide you 60% of cassava. If you can't own it, then you have to build what we call the cluster farming system, where you can get maybe smallholder farms of each owning 10 hectares of land, or 50 hectares of land, or 250 hectares of land. You put them together, they have a contract with you, and you are able to address inputs to them, provide them with input, seeds, fertilizer, mechanization, and so on. And when they supply you, then they get back their money. So if you have to build up, if you just have a factory and you think you can just get roots from the open market or from anybody that people need it, you'll be shocked when the prices are not favorable for the industries to buy. The farmers will shift. But when you have this type of model dedicated to your factory, then that guarantees you higher supply at the time of scarcity. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. So if you have those type of cluster system, this is a good place to intervene with a lot of training on competitive farming. Now, when you are acquiring your land, it is very good that the location is very important. Look at the location. Cassava requires a well-drained soil. Cassava does not do well under trees. So the vegetation should be right. The size of land also should be known by you. You need to actually get the recroppable land from the entire land. So using a GPS with an area calculation option will enable you to quickly do that, because every input that you will use in that land will be calibrated by the size of the land. When you want to hire labor, it's based on the land. When the tractor needs to operate, it is also per hectare. When you want to apply herbicide, it's also liters per hectare, and so on. So if you don't know the size of the land, you may lose money when your farm manager or whoever is operating your farm gives you different data. The soil type is also important. Cassava will do well in a slightly acidic loamy soils. So we also, if you don't have that, cassava has wide gap of range of soils it can operate in. So your best bet will now be to apply the best variety that will do well in that particular soil. Now, we also, these days, have to be conversant with our communities. Where that farm is related, what's the relationship with the community? What are the history of fire case incidents in that area? How will you manage it? And then what of the history of cattle herdsmen? Next slide. Next slide. So it's key to get these facts addressed before you plant. No, go back. Go back. It's also good that you take this rule of thumb that we have proposed here, which you can use to be able to estimate how much land you have. Most people have land, and from land they start to calculate what they can produce. But if you have a factory and you want to calculate back how much land will I need to be able to provide me 60% or 100% of my needs, you can use this simple conversion rate, 4:1 for Gary. So if you get 4 kg of fresh fruit, you get 1 kg of Gary. Chips, 3 kg of fresh fruit, you get 1 kg of chips. HQCF, 4 kg of fresh fruit, you get 1 kg of that. So if your factory capacity is 200 tons per day or so, you can now calculate how much root should I be receiving per day, how much root would I receive per year. So if I get that number of root per year, how much land do I need to cultivate that volume of root per year at a certain yield? Maybe you just take 20 tons or 25 tons, then that can tell you the amount of land you should have. If you don't have that land, then you can now say, okay, I can do this portion of land, then I can build the cluster to provide the rest. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide, please. Okay, so the stems that you have, it's very important that When you're getting it, you should know their properties, high yield, the high dry matter content, starch content. You should also know the source of the stem and the age of the stem. Cassava cotton that is about from a 3-year-old cassava will not sprout very well. So you wouldn't know when you see it. So it's good you know who you are taking from and know what's the age of that stem before it is given to you. You also need about 60 to know that you need about 60 bundles to plant 1 hectare. A bundle is 50 sticks of 1 meter length each. The prices of bundles vary. Some places is 500 naira to 1,000 naira per bundle, or 1 to minus transporting it. Okay. So you need to know this. And also when it's being transported, it's very critical that your land should be ready before the cassava arrives, so that it still has the vigor when it is planted. And when it is being handled, the nodes should be taken care of so you don't wound it, because that reduces the chances of sprouting. If you have to keep them stored, then please keep them in the vertical position with the nodes facing up, not lying flat horizontally on the ground. When you leave it flat on the ground, apical dominancy will not be there. Every node will start to germinate, and that will weaken the planting material. Next slide. It's also good that when you are cutting the stem, that you use a sharp cutting material, knife, something sharp that can cut straight through. When you have it in the broken portion, as you can see on the left there, you will not have sufficient root system formed at that point, and that will put the plant at a disadvantage. You want to have a lot of fibrous root when it's germinating, so that more will be dedicated to storage. Next slide. So as I mentioned before, when we clear the land for cassava, there's a lot of things that happen because we remove the trees, the land is open to erosion. Most of our lands naturally are already having very low fertility. There's also increase in itching and so on and so forth. Now, when you harvest your crop, let's say you get 10 tons per hectare from your cassava, you've removed about 30 kg nitrogen, 4 kg phosphorus, and 20 kg potassium. And as you're getting bigger yields, the more you're removing. It's not only cassava that does this. So if we also take the leaf, a lot is also going. So we have no choice, but also plan how we return nutrients back to this soil for the next season cropping. Next slide. Next slide. And this now shows you what we're talking about, the effect of fertilizer on the cassava. Now, cassava, as I said, is affected by environment. So this graph shows you 43 varieties using the same fertilizer, the same period of time. You can see the response in yield. Some doubled, some did not move. So this is something that every farmer should know for his own farm. What works for you? Even when it's not working for you, you can't go as high as maybe the 4 bags per hectare that is recommended. You can just do 2 bags just to retain the normal fertility, at least base fertility in your soil. But when people say fertilizer is not good for cassava, it's not good for, it's not true. Fertilizer is good for cassava for the variety that responds best for that fertilizer. So we need to know which variety for what fertilizer and for what soil. Next soil. Next slide. So as I said again, so weed is a major constraint in our farm. Mainly because of the resilience of the crop, people just, once they harvest their maize or harvest anything in intercrop, they now leave the cassava to stay. It is a blessing to us that it's such a crop that even when there is fire, there is war, there is any disaster, once any cassava stick touch ground, it will germinate. But since we are talking about business, we need to now manage the weed issue. And this is a place where we can make use of our youth by providing them with less drudgery, equipment and make it more useful for them to gain employment. Next slide. So there are herbicides that have been duly tested and recommended that we can use in our cassava fields. We have got 3 main times we need to use this herbicide. We need to use the first one we call the glyphosate during land preparation. So after 14 days, we can now go ahead and do the operations of ridging, and then we can plant. And once we plant, we now apply the second herbicides called the pre-emergence herbicides. And on the left, these are different brands that are out there in the market: Premextra, Gold, Fierce, and so on. You can get any of these trade names. So you apply this, immediately you plant, just the next day before the cassava begin to sprout. And then when the crop is now doing well, grown, maybe about 3 months after that, and you still find maybe 30% of wheat, you can apply some of these post-emergence herbicides like fusilade and so to control the weeds. This will drop down your cost of weeding using manual labor. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. So just a field of flagon at 6 weeks. Now we have simplified all that I've said about weed control in what is called the 6 steps, where you first select the right land, you slash down the vegetation, then you now apply the glyphosate and you wait for 14 days. Then you prepare your land, then you plant the cassava, and after planting, you now spray the pre-emergence. And then any stands that did not germinate within 15 to 21 days, you replace them so that you can ensure that you have that 12,500 plant stands. And when the weed cover is about 30% of the field, you can apply a post-emergence weed control. Next slide. Next slide. Okay, next slide. Now, here is the key thing that every farm manager, no, back please. Back. Back. One slide back. Okay, so here's a key thing every farm owner must know how to manage. I have put here the whole cost of production, all the steps that you need to use in the farm, but it's not all that we apply for every farm, and you have to also look at the economic gain in using the step or not. You know, you have the land preparation, the plowing, at times is 2 times, at times is 1, depending on your own situation, whether you should ridge or whether you should use a cassava planter. I have put all these costs, and it brings us our total production cost about 366,000 naira to do 1 hectare. Now, assuming we achieved 25 tons per hectare in yield, where everything being equal, and we look at the present prices that cassava is sold, because most times the market that determines the price, farmers, it's always difficult for them to be the one to predict what price it will be. For instance, today price is about 30,000 naira per ton for fresh fruit. Okay, so you will see that there's a big, fantastic profit that any farmer will make. Okay, but let's go down and we say, okay, when it is now 15,000 naira for fresh fruit, what will the farmer be getting? The yields, his profit becomes much lower, and at 10,000 naira, his yield is as low as 9,000 naira. So your ability as a farm manager or owner to be able to moderate this input cost is also a key to making you successful in handling the cassava enterprise business. Next. Hello, next. So I'll conclude to say that for commercial farm, the cluster farming system is key. We need to incentivize the formation of cluster farmers around our industries and disseminate to them improved production packages to increase their productivity. Machines remove drudgery and reduce cost and increase the land area to be cropped. So mechanization is key. Tillage will reduce weed biomass and has consistently positive effects on the root yield. For varieties, we should at least begin with at least 3 best variety for our locality. And we should have them at least at 12,500 plant stands. That is what is recommended when we plant. The cropping system, sow cropping maximizes cassava yield, but if you're a small scale farmer and you want to intercrop with maize, it's not bad. And then fertilizer application, use of fertilizer generally increases yields, but the effects vary depending on the site and the economic return you'll get from using the fertilizer. So managing our production cost is a key thing that we must do to raise, to make sure that we are able to have higher yields at a lower cost of production. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Such an in-depth presentation, making a case for mechanized farming in cassava production. Thank you very much. I felt like, and I'm sure, as with many people have gone to school, told us, and even a novice will go away from this with in-depth knowledge as to the cassava production trade. Thank you very much to Dr. Richardson from IIT. Thank you. All right, we'll move on very quickly because of our time. I'd like to move this on as quickly as possible, as we still have some very important presentations to go through this afternoon. We're now in the afternoon, so officially good afternoon, the chairman, board members of the Party Business Group Nigeria, panelists, and all registered delegates here present. Good afternoon. We'll move on to our next presentation. I did mention earlier on that we will be seeking later on a member or a representative from the Bank of Industry. That will come shortly. But before then, to speak to on their experience in cassava production, the MD of Sultry International Limited. The next paper to be presented is titled Processing of Cassava in the Nigeria Environment, Sultry International Limited Experience. And please permit me to give you a proper introduction of the MD CEO at Sultry International Company. And she's an agro-processor with good knowledge of mechanized cassava farming and processing. So bringing into practicality all that you have heard Dr. Okichukwu speak about. She presently manages a 2,000 hectare of cassava plantation. She also is a specialist in organizing farmers into groups of our growers. Distinguished guests, please make very welcome Mrs. Denisi, who is the MD of Sultry National Limited, as she gives us our next paper.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear. May I please ask that you put your video on?
Come again?
May I please ask that you enable your video, please?
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am. Whilst Mrs. Role puts on enables her video option on the screen, I'd like to apologize to our speakers for the delay in the presentation. It's as a result of the internet. It's as a result of the internet provision. So, apologies. The slides are put on next immediately. However, network says a different thing. So, apologies. So, thank you very much. I'll wait for Mrs. Ronway. Let me kindly know, please, if you're having challenges.
Hello?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
to enable it,
Okay.
please accept my request. Thank you, ma'am. In the meantime, I'll proceed to share your slide, if that's okay. While we await, are you, is that okay?
Yeah. Yeah, we are seeing. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you loud and clear. Unfortunately,
Can I-
we cannot see you though.
Can I start now? I'm seeing my presentation.
Yes, ma'am. I'll just ask that you kindly enable your video. In the event that you're having challenges with that, then it's okay. You can present without your video. However, I would prefer you to have it on.
I have actually enabled my video, but price is not coming up. And I was actually even seeing myself before. Anyway, let's just.
Okay, ma'am. I see you now. Thank you very much. Please go ahead with the presentation. Thank you very much.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. It's nice to be here this afternoon and to share a bit of what we have been doing and what we have learned in this industry over a decade or close to a decade now. Sotri International Limited is actually into the production of food grade starch, high quality cassava flour, and other products like glucose and sorbitol that we are currently going into in the next few months. We have in the center stage of our production, our business process, working with smallholder farmers. As a matter of fact, one of our mission is to
sorry to interrupt you a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm quite sorry to interrupt you. We can't see the presenter. Hello?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. I do believe that the presenters.
It's from your end.
I do believe that.
Come
Okay,
again.
I do believe that where internet connection is unstable, we will be unable to see your video even though it has been enabled. However, the presentation is what's being shown on screen. So ask that until the internet is stable, may I please ask that she continue her presentation so we can proceed with the conversation. Thank you very much. So we'll just ask, her presentation is up and I'll follow her video. However, once her internet becomes stable, then she will be able to share her video. Thank you.
Okay then, thank you.
Okay, but can you hear me very well?
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, so can I have the first slide, please? Can I have the first slide, please? Okay, so like I was saying, Sotri International have at the back of its center stage, the center of its business are the cassava farmers, and one of our major mission is to transform smallholder farmers into commercial farmers. And so from the beginning of this business, we made working with smallholder farmers one of our major business models. So from beginning, what we did was to start by grouping farmers. We actually started with just about 20 farmers. Today we have well above 6,000. We organize those farmers and provide them with all the necessary inputs that is required to be able to cultivate cassava. So some of this information we have already mentioned. Some of my other colleagues have already mentioned in the past, so I won't take your time about the global consumption of cassava and all of that. But then the major point such we want to emphasize, which is a bit different from what others have said, is that for cassava processing companies to survive in Nigeria, there must be that strong partnership with the rural environment, that is the smallholder farmers. We are actually located in the middle of a village in a farming community. That's where we put the factory. Can I go to the next slide? And in where the factory is, there was no power, there was no light, but then we had the farmers, and we saw that as major resource. We saw that as very important, above power and even good roads. Today we have power, we have good roads, and we still have the farmers. Because those other things you can bring in, but when you don't have your raw material, then your factory is going to run in an epileptic method. So today we moved this fast in 8 years because we have at least average of 10 to 11 months consistent supply of raw material and production. Can I have the next slide? Can I have the next slide? So in other words, can I have the next slide, please? Okay. So in other words, for a cassava processing company to strive, there must be that strong public-private partnership. This is very advantageous because you can face your processing while you can organize farmers strong enough to support your farm. You can, for us in Sochi, we have 2-3 models. One of it is the smallholder farmers, the commercial farmers, and our backup farm. We have it in ratio of 40, 40, and 20. That is, the smallholder farmers will take about 40. The commercial farmers slightly bigger than the smallholder farmers, like 50 hectares, 100 hectares. So we call those ones commercial farmers as it were. They take about 40%, and then Sochi have its own backup of about 20%. This way, we are able to balance the scenarios as things change, and then the company is able to have raw material all the year round. In this case, you now have a win-win situation where both parties stand to gain. I mean, they make money from supplying us raw material. We are able to run in a more continuous fashion. Can I have the next slide, please? Okay. Now, in our Agro scheme, our success story, over the last 8 years, this is the only model we have run. And as a matter of fact, when we started this model, it was not very popular because then farmers were seen to be cheating, never able to deliver products. When you give them assistance, they don't come back. They see it as their own national cake. But in the case of Sochi, we did it in a slightly different manner that have made us to be able to achieve great success in this space. One of it is that, first of all, we identify the farmer to be a true farmer. He must really belong to the very community where we find him. He must also be able to get a community leader. He does not a community leader to identify him that he lives in that village or he farms in that community. There must be a face to him. So in this case, we eliminate the issue of white collar farmer, a fake farmer, getting your input and moving away. So that's very key for us. And then the farmer then signs a contractor farming plan. So we go to his land and do a GPS reading of his land. So we are able to know what is the amount of land the farmer has. And it must belong to a group. Even if that village does not have a group before, we form them into a little cluster and they give themselves a name and they have their what they call it, their executives. So they write their minutes in Yoruba. They just must meet together always because it's only their representative that talks to the company, not everyone. We can't relate to 3,000 farmers, but then we can relate with the groups of the different groups. So then we have about 60 different groups that form different clusters. And these groups are the ones we talk to. They are the ones we negotiate. They are the ones that negotiate on behalf of their group members. Can I see the next slide, please? Also, because we are very close, hello, can I see the next? Good. Because we are also very close to the farmers, they are within our farming. When we started, we were like 50 kilometer radius to all our farm groups. Today we've gone beyond 50. We are like 100 kilometers north, south, east, and west of where our factory is presently located. Now, what do we really do for them? First of all, we do a lot of capacity building. We train them on agronomic practices. Most things that Dr. Okechukwu spoke about, we actually train the farmers. We do the manuals in Yoruba so that we can relate with them. Of course, they form cooperative, like I have said, and we also teach them group dynamics, record keeping, and how to contractor arrangement. That is how they should even negotiate with us. We actually even teach them how to negotiate with us. So because we teach them how to keep their records, they are able to know how much they planted their product. And so when we say this is the price we should be buying, this is how much profit you are going to make, they can connect with us, they can understand, and they don't feel cheated when we present the cases before them. Then after that, the farmers now book for their land preparation. We have about 15 tractors in-house that we give to the farmers. So they book, each group have two field officers. Only small groups have one field officer, because in some villages we have 3-4 groups. So we have the field officer who uses a farm force, that is a web-based handheld program to monitor the fields and the farmers and their activities. So he logged them in for land preparation. We go in and do their land preparation for them, and then they sign off the prices. From beginning of the season, we would have all agreed on how much factorization should be. If it is, we normally give about 10% discount, from 10 to 15% discount from what it is usually done in the commercial scene, so that at least they get the benefit from that. And then they don't pay until they bring the product the following year. We also now provide input. Some get STEM, we give STEM free. Farmers don't pay for our STEM. Once you are in our group and we have STEM, you get it free. And then they get herbicide at the control price, and then they get fertilizer for some. We don't give fertilizers all this because it's really very expensive. So we give fertilizers only on if we have a grant, or we have we're able to link them to the bank, and then the bank provides 100% funding for those farms. So we have different categories of farms, because we actually link them to finance. So when we are able to link them to either what do you call it, this program of the CBN, the anchor branch scheme, then they get full finance for their farms. This way they now get money for fertilizer and weeding. But if it is under the Sultry AgRAS program, they basically just get factorization, they get them, and they get herbicide. And then the farmer's contribution is to plant and to weed his farm. He gets herbicides for 3 applications. So for those of them who can really manage their farm, that takes them through. Maybe they will just weed once, or some will never even weed at all. Next slide, please. Also, because the farms are not too far from us, they come in pickups. You can see, unlike other factories that come in big trucks, we because our fields are not too far, they come in pickups, and they come in really fresh. So within 6 hours, most of our crops are here. But those ones that are by 100 kilometers, they are the ones we use trucks. So Sultry have a department that have about 10 trucks that go to those farms that are beyond 100 kilometers. I mean, about 100 kilometers. Why those within 20 to 30 kilometer radius come to the factory with small pickups? So farmers group also, after this, they are growing today, so they are now buying their own pickups according to their various clusters, so that they are seeing the business opportunity and they are just linking in to those opportunities. So I think I have actually passed through this. Can I go to the next slide, please? The next slide, please. Hello? 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 Can you still hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Now, we'll ask what is the farmer benefiting? This arrangement. The farmer is, when we started, we used to buy, yeah, it grew to 250, it grew to 300. As at last year, we're buying 700 million. This year, with the expansion that have just been done, we'll be buying cassava of about 2 billion in the next 1 year, every year. So you can imagine 2 billion are being distributed to 10 rural communities with no power, no road. The impact is massive. The earning power of the people grew more than 1,000-fold. Today, the village where I came to 12, 13 years ago with just 3 huts now have houses built with blocks. We have given them power as part of our CSR. We've given them water. In fact, there's a whole lot of migration to that community now because they are so close to us and they have land. So farmers have enough money to build modern houses, to even ride cars. When we have farmers meetings, you see them bring their jeeps and we jest about it. And then they are able to go to they are able to go to pilgrimage, they move to Israel because their earning power has increased. They're able to sponsor their children to private schools. Now, where Sotri is, Alaide village is the one that gave us land, and that village is one village that was cut off before we came here. It's only during elections that they see visitors when they come to get them to vote. Today, when I stand in my house in the morning by 6 o'clock, the best private school in Isen local government drives to my community to come and pick my staff's children and go to the village to pick the village children. And that gives me joy. You can imagine the kind of joy that you have, that what we have created here can make farmers bold enough to pay private, put their children in private university and look at dreaming big for their children. So it's because of the fact that they have constant revenue from selling cassava to us, they can also do their planning. And this they pick from the trainings that we provide for them to do their planning, and they can say, oh, I'm earning 4 million next year from my farm, so I can take my child to a school of 500,000 and all of that, so they can do their planning. There's also an increase in agrowers' yield. Farmers, the yield is increasing year in, year out because of training, because of better understanding of the farming methodology, fertilizer, and all of that. Also, reacting to what will happen in the next 5 years for farmers, we think that in the next 5 years, all the stem farmers have now would have been getting weak in potency. So this company is reacting very fast by having a hydroponic lab. It's an SAH lab, which we did in collaboration with IITA to produce our own cassava stems. The plan is that in the next 3 years, we should start removing the old stems from farmers and start to give them these new stems, thereby increasing their yield and increasing the profit that the farmers are making, because we notice that their yield is dropping. They now have to apply more fertilizer, and their profit is also dropping because they have to apply fertilizer on very large amount of fertilizer to get the kind of yield that they need to get. Can we go to the next slide, please? Yeah. So if you ask what is the advantage to the processor, it's guaranteed market, basically, that you are able to guarantee. We are able to guarantee raw material for our planning. We are able to plan raw material, even though we always discount by 30%. Okay, even if we have planted 8,000 hectares today, our farmers are farming close to 5,000 to 6,000 hectares of farmland over 100 kilometers. We will discount and say 70% of it will come. Let's assume that 30 will default. We'll still be able to have enough to run our factories 70% all the year round. That is our own major benefit. And also, majorly, it's even the joy of seeing young people happy. We've been able to increase a lot of young people into this business. A lot of women are also coming into farming now because we are providing planters and some of the broom sprayers and all that for especially the women, because we want to include We want to increase the women food in cassava farming as much as possible. So for us, it's making us able to exist in this environment because the farmers are happy, then we are able to do our business in a happy way. And then we can actually even trace for traceability. We can trace the varieties. We can trace from farm to fork. We can trace the product from the farmers to the kidney cube in the kitchen, or to the beverage on our breakfast table, or to the cereal in your cornflakes, because we know the farms where these products come from. So for us, it is part of what we are benefiting. And then for the community is also benefiting CSR. Over the last 8 years, we've done several CSRs, provide power, provide water, we train, we give scholarships to young people, we provide computers, we even had to do eye operations. We did about 500 glasses for our farmers, about 50 of them went for cataract operation in conjunction with Atipa Eye Clinic and Catholic Mission. So we do such every year. We must have a project to do. So what farmers communities do is to come in and say, oh, we want this to qualify. You must be a community that is part of our outgrowers program. And then sometimes, yeah, they have to wait sometimes maybe for the next year if you already have a program for this year, but at least there's hope that they know that that program will eventually be carried on. And this is part of the reasons why we think has helped our growth, because we know when we do planning, we can be sure of 75% success of that planning, because the farmers are being carried along. And for every growth, every decision of growth, we carry the farmers along and say, are you ready for this growth? We want to do this factory, we want to do this project. Is everybody ready? What is the strategy? How do we increase the land mass and all of that? And they come up with solutions. We don't see it as if we are all knowing, because when it comes to raw material, they have their native intelligence that they provide the land, they provide the raw material. So we discuss with them. So together we take such big decisions to say, okay, next year we are going to do this, and then everybody's going to increase their land by 2. Everybody's going to get their children into this, because we need to move from 6,000 to 10,000 farmers. Everybody should bring a friend, and then it's easier for us to execute. Can I have the next slide, please? Yeah, this is just the way. This is the map of where we are and proximity to raw material. Can I have the next slide? Okay. I think I've mentioned a lot about the capacity strengthening of the farmers at various farm sites, the training at the village setting, the training on the field. We use demo plots to train the farmers. We provide each 2 to 3 plotters, depending on how far they are from each other, have a demo plot, which we do, and they come to learn from the demo and go and repeat on their farm. This way, we are able, when we harvest the demo, we look at the yield, can use to compare their own yield. So it's easier for them also to see when they are not doing something right, and they can quickly correct and they can compare. The next slide, please. The next slide. So we also normally have this kind of big meetings where we actually bring everyone to Sultry, and they sit with us, and sometimes with our banks as well, and then we tell them about new funding, opportunities of funding. We do that once a year, but for COVID, we've even had it early in the year. This year, before the COVID came in, we had it in February. Before, it's normally early in the year, beginning of the season. We call it Farmers Day. So all the farmers come and send representatives, because we can't have 6,000 farmers. So they come in different representatives, and even still we still have like a crowd of 800 to 900 farmers, if not more. And then their day, so sometimes the companies come in with some of their products, and they talk to them, like we have Nestle and Unilever there last year, and they talk to them and give them some of the products so they can see where the cassava is going into. So when they are buying a seasoning in the market, maybe Maggi or not, they know that, oh, possibly it is cassava from my farm that goes into this. And you can imagine the amount of joy that goes to the heart of the farmer to know that the labor they are doing is also translated to the food that they are eating, as it were. Part of why we stand out as a company is because we've had consistency in quality over time, and we produce both industrial and food grade on a B2B model. And farmers expect cash and carry. And this is one of the constraints that I think this industry is facing right now, because the banks don't understand that, okay, this year you have to cough out money from your cash flow to help farmers farm for next year. At the same time, you are paying cash on delivery for this present year. So at every time, if you need a 200 million cash flow for 1 month, you actually need a 400 million at a time, because you are also planting for next year, which if you don't do, then you will not get products for next year. So it's an industry that needs very heavy cash flow. And the banks are yet to understand the modality of how the dynamics of how the cassava is planted. It's a 1 year crop. And then when they bring it, because the farmers have waited 1 year, they can't wait one more day once they bring their product in. Yes, you supply the multinationals, they pay you in 30 days or 90 days, as the case may be. So you see, there's a disconnect in the line. So it puts a lot of pressure on the industry. The industry, even though it blesses a lot of lives, provides a lot of advantages to the community where you exist, needs support. The kind of support we need is the bank to understand, and then government will help provide roads. Most of the time we have to use put our own. We have about 3 bulldozers just to create feeder roads to connect villages to us. Right now we are looking at a bridge across a crucial river to shorten the route for farmers to bring in products. I mean, so you can imagine, apart from doing your own normal processing, providing working capital for farmers to farm for next year, in the case where you cannot go to Anchor Brand scheme for CBN, and then you have to pay cash on delivery, you still have to provide social amenities for the route to come to your factory. So it's a burden, it's a heavy load on the manufacturing industry as it were. Can we go to the next slide, please? Next slide, please. Of course, one of the advantages that we have had over time, because we run consistent production, is that we have customer satisfaction. Our customers are happy with us because we can sign contracts and meet about 80%, if not 100% of the contract that we signed in the beginning of the year. We also have local regulatory compliance. We have NIF. We also meet customer specification. We even have FSC 22000. We have both local and international certifications. This makes our products be able to be sold locally or even at the international space. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Yeah. We do a lot of research with IIT. We collaborate with IIT in a lot of their research. We work with IFDC in 1 or 2 research in the past, and Cassava. We have a lot of international partners like Cassava, IDH, IIT on different parts of Cassava, and these have also helped us to be able to transfer knowledge to the farmer. So when we do this research, with them, when we collaborate with them to do certain research, the information becomes available for us to give to our farmers, as well as most of them are being published, and it blesses the entirety of Africa or the cassava community as a whole. Next slide. Yeah. So thank you. This is my short presentation.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Very grateful indeed. Another quality, detailed presentation by Mrs. Yemisi Imoroyi, who is the MD at Sultry International Limited. I think one of the things that we must commend is the passion with which you speak, and speaking, to hear someone speaking from the place of experience. I was just having a conversation in the background that it is important for us to see the people who are actually at the farms, who are doing the work, and the experiences, their challenges, and despite